Democrats have been painting Kilmar Abrego Garcia as, quote, an innocent Maryland dad. But the Justice Department released documents yesterday, including a 2019 police report that they say confirm Garcia's MS-13 ties. And Fox News obtained written domestic violence allegations filed in court by his wife, handwritten by her in 2021. But Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen flew to El Salvador on a mission to bring Garcia back to the U.S.
The goal of my visit is to talk to people here about the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I told his wife and his family I would do everything possible to bring him home, and we're going to keep working at this until we're successful.
Rachel Morin's mother slammed the Maryland senator for the trip during emotional remarks at the White House yesterday.
Why are we not protecting our children? And to have a senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledged my daughter and the brutal death that she endured, leaving her 5 children without a mother and now a grandbaby without a grandmother, so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen. Why does that person have more right than I do, or my daughter, or my grandchildren? I don't understand this.
Did he ever say anything to you and your family about your loss? To ever call you, ever take the time to be with you?
No, actually, I'm very angry. I'm actually outraged, but I'm too sad at the moment to show anger at the same time. He did not call our family. He did not give condolences. There was no action on the Democratic Party in any way, from Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Mayorkas, anyone here in Maryland, none of the senators did anything to help search for the murderer of my daughter.
This is why Americans voted for change, because while Biden did a whole lot of nothing other than opening up the borders and allowing millions of people to cross our borders illegally into the United States, it's just disgusting.
President Trump set on fixing all of that horror. This morning, the president posting on Truth Social in part, quote, "Sorry, but it's my job to get these killers and thugs out of here. That's what I got elected to do. MAGA."
Well, we concluded the trial here this week. Our state's attorney did a great job presenting that case, and a 46-minute deliberation by the jury put that killer behind bars. I don't want him going back to El Salvador. I want him to die in a Maryland prison. We don't have the death penalty here, but I want him to die in a Maryland prison that he came here and committed this horrific act. But what do we see? We see Senator Van Hollen flying to El Salvador to bring an MS-13 member back. You think it can't get more insane, but this is the state of Maryland, and obviously it can. And I'm glad I heard just before we went on air that he did not get an opportunity to meet with this prisoner, that he was turned down by El Salvador's president or vice president, the senator was.
Joining us now is Sean Spicer, former White House press secretary. Sean Spicer, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. It appears that some Democrats are using the case of alleged MS-13 gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia to be some kind of hero. Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen travelled to El Salvador to see Kilmar Abrego Garcia and to push for his release. It's not going his way, though. He wasn't able to visit him. But, you know, the mainstream media has just been fawning over this alleged criminal, describing him as a Maryland father. Border czar Tom Homan has blasted the Democrats and parts of the mainstream media for defending him.
I read a story about this. It's Maryland father, Maryland father. They don't mention he's a member of MS-13, who is a designated terrorist group, one of the most violent gangs in the world. They don't mention he's an MS-13 member. They don't mention he's an El Salvadoran citizen being held by the country of El Salvador. El Salvador makes that decision. Now the courts said we got to facilitate. We'll facilitate, but El Salvador has full authority on this. Again, a terrorist threat. Now, if somehow he comes back and that happens, he's going to be detained and removed again. He's an MS-13 gang member based on our intelligence and El Salvador's intelligence. He will be detained and he will be deported. But what's the sense of bringing someone back that's simply going to face deportation again? He's a public safety threat. He's a gang member and he's a designated terrorist. We should not be bringing any of those people back to the United States. That's my opinion.
Great to hear some common sense from Tom Homan there. But what do you make of Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen travelling to El Salvador to try and visit this alleged criminal?
Gabrielle, I think this is fascinating to me. I mean, look, here are the facts, just so we're clear, and I think Tom Homan did a good job of laying them out. This individual came into the United States illegally. Fact. No one disagrees with that. Fact. He was a member of a gang. In his court pleading, he says that he's concerned about going back to El Salvador because he is a member of a gang. So that was his pleading to the court. Fact, he has a deportation notice issued by a court in the United States saying he must go home. And final fact is he is a citizen of El Salvador. Yeah. I don't understand what Chris Van Hollen is doing, because he's basically going down saying, I want to rescue a gang member from another country to come back into the United States to potentially do harm. You played those clips over and over again. The idea that he is a Maryland man, that's like saying I'm an astronaut because I look at the moon and I mean, like, what makes him a Maryland man? He's not from Maryland. He happened to be in Maryland when he got arrested, but that makes me Australian because I visited there once and bought a pair of Uggs. That doesn't make me Australian. And I think that the media here is more sympathetic with a gang member from another country who has broken the law and been in the United States in order to be deported than they do with the thousands of victims who have faced the violent crimes from people in this country illegally. But the idea that a United States senator is going to another country to beg for a citizen of that country to come back to the United States really speaks volumes to their priorities. And this is a fight that President Trump will win every day of the week.
Absolutely. What does it say about the Democratic Party and what they really stand for? We heard from Patty Marin, whose daughter Rachel Marin was horrifically killed by an illegal immigrant from El Salvador in 2023, and she slammed Chris Van Hollen for his trip. You know, shouldn't the Democratic Party really be prioritising the American people and keeping them safe?
You know, if this election was about anything else last November here in the United States, it was about where the priorities of the country should be. The idea that we had open borders, we were allowing people just to come in, we were then giving them hotel rooms, cell phones, gift cards. It was insane. Donald Trump's restored order to this. And again, this gets back to the politics of this. The Democratic Party right now is siding with gang members. Those are not disputable facts. The guy allocated in court that he didn't want to return to El Salvador because he was a member of a gang. Not my words, not the government's words, his words. So the bottom line is, when members of Congress like Chris Van Hollen or Cory Booker of New Jersey start pleading, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for them to come back, you have to question whether or not they are more worried about the rights of people breaking the law in this country than they are of citizens of this country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Detain. The police had to detain the suspect for further questioning. Deport. He was deported after living in the country illegally for several years. Intelligence. The agency gathered intelligence on potential threats. Blast. The senator blasted the new policy during the press conference. Fawn over. He always fawns over his boss to get a promotion. Deliberate. After a long meeting, the committee reached a deliberate decision. Outrage. The public was outraged by the unfair verdict. Condolence. We sent our deepest condolences to the family of the victim. Endure. She had to endure years of discrimination in the workplace. Slam. The journalist slammed the government's response to the crisis. Allegation. He denied the allegations made against him.
If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date with future videos. Thank you for watching.